Welcome, everybody, to the Minnesota Sports Collaboration Podcast Show, where we highlight all of our Minnesota content creators, shows, and friends here on the program. Poppy, how's it going?
It's going great, man. I'm excited to come together with all of our friends. You've heard them on our show, or if you're listening on their show, maybe you've heard us jump in with them. But every week, we're going to have little teasers and snippets from everybody's shows in one spot on all of our feeds so you can get a little taste. And hey, if you haven't listened to one, go check them out. Throw everyone a quick little subscribe, and let's make everyone happy. Now, Isha, what's the first one we have here for this week?
We're going to throw to LockedOn Wild. Our boy Seth Topol drops daily Minnesota Wild content with a wide range of guests. Here's a quick clip of some of his recent content.
Kevin Fiala had a couple of goals again, and just continues to be on an absolute heater over his last several games. In fact, over his last 24 games. We'll get to why 24 is a significant number here in a second. Over his last 24 games, Kevin Fiala has 13 goals, 17 assists. By that math, 30 points in 24 games. He is now on pace, ladies and gentlemen, for a season that would put him near the top of the list in terms of total points in Wild history. He is currently on pace now for 30 goals and 46 assists. He's on pace for a 76-point season. And this after the start to the year in which it seemed like it took Fiala forever to get himself going. He finished basically the first 2 months of the season with 3 goals. He scored in the first game of the year and then did not score for almost another month. So you take that slow stretch out of play. Did the math with a little help. I tried to do the math and the formula did not work whatsoever, which is just fantastic. Hideki Nishida on Twitter assisting with some of the numbers projections because we were trying to figure out what his points pace is with Matt Boldy on that line. That's where the 24 games comes in handy because that's the number of games that Boldy has played with the Wild, and Fiala has basically been there every step of the way with him on that line. So, the points pace for Fiala with Matt Boldy on the team is over 100. He's on pace through those 82 games. If you take the sample size with Matt Boldy and you stretch it out to an 82-game season, Fiala is on pace for over 44 goals and over 58 assists, 102.5 points per 82 games with Matt Boldy as his line mate. Kirill Kaprizov, by that same token, who now has 71 points in 55 games, is on pace for 106 points, 42 goals, 64 assists. He's already moved himself into the top 5 all-time for the Wild in single-season points totals. He's already done it with 55 games played on the season. This is going to go down for Kaprizov. Well, here's the crazy thing. We figured that Kirill Kaprizov was going to do this, was going to continue to rise after a sensational season last year. So he is going to back up winning the Calder Trophy by shattering the team record for points in a season. Not a bad encore. But Kevin Fiala is going to slide himself, if he continues on this pace, he's going to slide himself into the top 5 as well. So you have 2 guys that are right around 25 that will be heading into the offseason with career seasons for themselves, but also career seasons amongst Wild history. something to think about. Just fascinating to see how this is going to play out for the Minnesota Wild in the offseason, because one of those guys, Mr. Kevin Fiala, is going to have a contract situation come due here relatively soon. And you're not going to be able to take him to arbitration again and get him to stick around long term. So every point, every goal, every assist for Fiala drives his price up a little bit more. So fun to see those guys continuing to carry this team and continuing to push themselves towards all-time great Minnesota Wild seasons.
Again, if you like what you heard, you can follow all of Seth's great content by searching LockedOn Wild wherever you get your podcasts, or checking him out on social at LockedOn Wild.
Next, we have yours truly, the Sota Pod. We'll tease our other contributors later, but Hoppy and I talk everything Minnesota Wild beer and hockey. Here's a teaser from our most recent episode.
Isha, we talked about this in the live stream, but Minneapolis is actually a group of kids that my brother and a college buddy both coached them as AA Bantams, and a lot of the kids go off and play at private schools, but the ones that were left over managed to make it through. Apparently they're in my old section now. They were never there when I played there, but beat Duluth, Ben Meyer's alma mater, which, oh God, it'd be so cool if he ended up at the Wild, but I've already accepted that it probably won't happen. But squeaked through, got here. Minneapolis, Alexandria. What are we going with?
We got to go with your brother's team in Minneapolis.
All right, we're going Minneapolis.
You hear that, Joe? We're supporting your boys.
So there's not much drama to talk through here. There weren't any like crazy upsets, right? Like the top dog from 7 made it. The top dog from 8 made it. We got Hermantown and War Road. Matamidi, we knew would get through. And Minneapolis was the 1 seed for their section, but that was probably the most interesting path. But the rest of these, nothing too crazy to report. So we'll see what happens. But again, everyone, we want to know what the championship matchup is, who's going to win. Follow us, share the post on Wednesday, and you will be entered for one of the Soda Stick hoodies. Now we've got AA. This is where it gets a little bit more interesting, because we had some fucking craziness happening here. Because up here, Isha, there's maybe one team that squeaks through that's not great, but usually AA is like creme de la creme. And there were some really interesting tournaments leading up.
I even recognize a lot of the names here just from, again, covering the Minnesota Wild for 2 years and talking with you and other hockey fans. Like, obviously the high school names come up, and I'm like, these are the teams that I know now looking at this bracket.
For sure. And it's interesting too, because there's a lot that you've heard of and that that got beaten before getting in. That's what makes it crazy, is like no team is a lock to get in, no matter what their reputation is. So for the first, let's go through the seeding initially. Okay. So we got the 1 seed Hill Murray, who beat White Bear Lake in really what I'm going to call the Soda Stick matchup here, because White Bear Lake apparently blocked Soda Stick, and they immediately came out and said, well, guess what? We're going to be Hill Murray supporters then.
I saw that. That's insane.
So Landon, your team made it. They're the 1 seed. I hate Hill Murray, but I'll support them for you in just that sense. Number 2 seed, another private school. Fuck you. Cretin Durham Hall. Also, Isha, did you watch all the Mighty Ducks movies?
Yeah.
So in the 3rd movie, do you know what the school is that they attend?
So I'm guessing it's this one.
No, that it's called Eden Hall Academy.
Okay.
And it's a combination of Eden Prairie, Cretin Durham Hall, and St. Thomas Academy.
That's so funny.
They are the 2 seed. They came out of a tough battle, but they were the favorite to come out for their section. Number 3, Maple Grove, who was a team that was actually the number 2 seed in their section. Rogers was the team expected to come out ahead in that, but Maple Grove, always a strong program. Just interesting to see them pull off the 3, although some would argue with me, I guess. The 4 seed, this is where we get into the fun, Isha. The 4 seed is Moorhead High School. a team that I have historically supported wholeheartedly in the AA tournament. Orange jerseys, the Spuds. What a cool fucking name.
Oh,
Matt
you showed
Cullen
me this one,
is
yeah.
like the poster child of Moorhead hockey. And, Section 8, got to cheer for the Northern teams, and they've done a good job. They have dismembered Eden Prairie for me a couple of times. So they've always been a team of mine. But guess what? This year's different because the spoof Dave Spihar account posted something saying that when Roseau was upset by Elk River, it was basically, he didn't watch the game, but he just knew that Roseau fucked up and laid an egg. And I just commented because, like, I follow both those programs. Like, they're the programs, and green jerseys, and they're the Rams. Like, Roseau, that's a pretty cool thing. I'm like, oh, damn, I was really looking forward to that championship game. And some random person on Twitter replies, maybe next year. I'm like, I need to dig into this. Marcus, our man. Again, I'm going to cheer for Moorhead right now because I think they're our only chance to beat some of these private schools. But Marcus, had you guys made it to the tourney, I was going to be your biggest cheerleader. Elk River High School Elks, which we learned that a group of Elks is a gang. So definitely full-on Elk gang.
Elk gang, baby.
They upset Roseau. Not only upset Roseau, but Marcus, who's the one that clapped back at me in a very subtle, calm way. Dude put up a fucking hattie against them to do it. So fucking cool. Marcus, ball out, man. Maybe I'll just randomly run into Marcus at the tourney if he goes. But they actually were tight with Moorhead through the first two periods, like tied all the way through. And then finally Moorhead just pulled away, got a couple goal lead. Then goalie starts getting pulled. It ends up getting out of hand. The 8-4 score is not indicative of how that game went. Elk River, really cool that they went that far with them. And Moorhead, I mean, they had been a top 10 team for most of the year. So, but hey, kudos to my Elks. That's right, Elk River High School. But Moorhead's probably the team I'm going to support the heaviest out of this crew. Then we've got the 5 seed who will naturally play Moorhead, Andover High School. Andover of late has been a pretty strong program. Actually, I think they were runner-up. Maybe no, they might have won the tournament a couple of years back. And both boys and girls teams fucking stacked. My brother actually coached some of the girls in Elite League in the summer and just said, like, yeah, there's no chance they lose this. But Andover, they were at large expected to make it in. Then we have, of course, the random draws. Well, Lakeville South High School, which that one usually goes to Lakeville South or Lakeville North. They unfortunately have to match up with Hill Murray, which that's the one that's most up for debate because I think they were like 20-something-3, and they got stuck with the number 1 seed, whereas Prior Lake was the 4 seed in their section. Edina was not the 1 seed from their section, and they both got more favorable matchups. So that's where I think this process kind of gets fucked, but whatever. I just mentioned Edina gets in, and it's weird. I'm kind of conflicted because I love it when they get in because then I get to hate them, right?
Yeah,
like I want them to be there so I can hate them. It's a weird. I got a whole complex about me. I need to talk to my therapist about it. But
I know because even I'm picking up on this with you and Edina.
Fucking cake eaters, man. What is the quote? So it's on that Dave Spihar's that spoof account. It's the state tournament, the time of year when the northern teams hate the metro teams hate the private schools, and everyone hates
Edina.
Just incredible. It's incredible. I love it.
That's awesome.
If you didn't hate what you just listened to, you can find all of our content at the Sota Pod on social, that being Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, or by searching the Sota Pod wherever you get your podcasts. Who's up next?
Minnesota Sports Chat. Those new to Ross or Minnesota Sports Chat, you get anything from a unique spin on Minnesota sports to the Rex of a frozen pizza connoisseur.
House, if you follow the socials, many Gopher faithful, very angstful about, or angsty might be the better actual word to use, about how the Gopher basketball program finished. And I guess I really don't understand the angst. I get it if, you had high expectations for this team. And I'm not trying to tell people how to be fans, but at the same time, I'll tell you, I don't understand how people would have had such lofty expectations for this team. At the beginning of the year, I thought they could maybe win 10 games, and I thought that was probably even being optimistic. And they won 13. So, yeah, they finished last in the Big Ten, but whatever. To me, it is what it is. Nothing that Ben Johnson did or didn't do this year was going to lead me to have any grandiose opinions either for or against him. I will save those for, probably at the earliest mid to late next year, but realistically you're talking years 3 and 4. I don't put much stock into this. I had a few people come after me and say, well, this is the roster that he put together. Well, yeah, it's a roster he put together on the fly, and I get it. Other people did similar things and put together better rosters. They're also not coaching at Minnesota, that historically doesn't make the NCAA tournament.
I came into the season thinking, just like you did, the Big Ten season would be tough. They won a few more of the non-conference games than I had anticipated. And you saw earlier in the year how well they played when they weren't physically exhausted. I just thought by the end of the year, all those minutes were starting to add up. Look at Peyton Willis out there last night. I felt like he just had nothing left in the tank. Guys are just getting to the point where you can't keep playing all those minutes, and that's a result of, the patchwork roster, getting a lot of transfers, filling in the gaps, and not having the depth. So I would say, we saw the flashes with this program. Some wins where you're like, okay, Michigan, where they played super well on the road, and the X's and O's side of it where, Ben would draw some really great stuff up out of timeouts and they scored. I wrote a piece on that a few weeks ago, just looking at the success they had out of timeouts. Ben showed us that he has the X's and O's acumen and a really, really good staff. He just needs some talent. They need guys that are more versatile down, that can step outside, play in the post, create challenges for teams, in a variety of different ways. And Ben's just needs some time for that personnel. I thought we saw some really good things, but people just need to be patient.
You can find this beauty on social at Brendel Ross. That's BRENDEL Ross. And his podcast by searching Minnesota Sports Chat on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Who's up?
Judd's Budz. Mutant, Spitter, Sicko, Z. We don't care what you call him. To us, Spokes Z just means elite prospect coverage. Here's a preview of the brilliant ramblings you can hear on Judd's Budz.
Let's go to the questions because there's a lot of good ones, and there's just a lot in general. Let's start with Wild Farm Report. Assuming Fiala is on the team next year, who does Rossi fit better between 97-36 or 12-22? I'd say 12-22. I think Marco Rossi's, I think he's going to want the puck a lot more. I think both Fiala and Boldy do tend to have the puck a lot, but, I just look at the way Marco Rossi plays, especially going right. And, he's going to be going to the NHL. He's played with Boldy before. He's going to be on the puck more. He's going to be making more passes. I think 97-36, I think Kaprizov and Zuccarello, first of all, it's really hard to just step into the NHL and play with them. I think they play really fast in the offensive zone. They're doing their Kaprizov's doing a roundabout, doing 3 laps around the offensive zone, and then just pass it to Zuccarello. They're playing catch. I do think he just kind of fits better with Fiala and Boldy, and then even defensively, I think him and Boldy are really good at locking it down. But they already have chemistry together, so I'd start him there next season if they do decide to have him in the NHL next year, which I think he's ready, or he will be ready. And I think those are 2 really good line mates for him. Again, he's already played with Boldy, and they look incredible together on the power play, on the penalty kill, neutral zone. That chemistry's there, and I think he would look really good dishing to Fiala. Whether he's the play driver or he's going to be a complementary piece, he can just kind of fit in. That's the thing about Marco Rossi. He just fits in wherever he's playing. So I stick in between there. I think he sees more of the puck. And I think it's a lot less challenging than trying to fit in right with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. Even though I think they do elevate whoever their center is either way. But I think it's just a natural fit with Boldy and Fiala, with Rossi in between them. Dave Curtis, what was your I became a fan of the Wild when story? Dudes rock, confirmed. I think I've said this before. So, obviously growing up in Boston, I was, Boston's been the team forever. And then I was really young. I eventually just started watching more hockey outside of just Boston, especially when they were pretty bad for a little bit. So I started watching other teams around the league. I really started following teams that, the fan base was crazy, big hockey markets, the games looked sick. They were loud, they're fun. Minnesota kind of just caught my eye. It's obviously it's the state of hockey. The XL Energy Center is always bumping. For me, like if I'm going to live anywhere other than Boston, like Minnesota is like the ideal place for me. It's all hockey. It's just the way it is. But truthfully, so I started watching Minnesota when they first went back. And then I think it was the year that he set the franchise record for the most shorthanded goals in Bruins history in one season. I fell in love with Brian Ralston. He scored 9 shorties. I think it was 03. And the lockout happened. He ended up in Minnesota. He was great in Minnesota. So that's kind of when I just jumped on that bandwagon. And ever since then, they've been like 1B. So we can thank the state of hockey, and we can thank Roly Poly Oli. That's not his name. Brian Rolston, breakaway clap bombs and then scoring shorties like no one's business. But yeah, it was really Brian Rolston, believe it or not. And now it's just been love ever since. My buddy Dom Tiano, I know it's tongue in cheek. Will Jack McBain sign an NHL or AHL deal as soon as his season's over? NHL, because I think there's a chance he could get into games at the end of the year. I think his game naturally translates to the NHL. Obviously it's a big jump, especially when this is the first year he's really popped off. Yeah, I know the rumors. If you go and listen to the 31 or 32 Thoughts podcast today with Merrick and Friedman, Merrick explained the McBain situation exactly how I told you he meant it. There are no real rumors. But if you think that the Wild wouldn't be willing to include him in a package, if he could be a package for a big center, then yeah, they would do that. It's a no-brainer. Like, I love the kid, but he's not like irreplaceable. I don't think it's like if you trade him, it's not like you're trading Marco Rossi or Husnudinov, if that would have crazy implications on the future of your franchise. So, yeah, I think he signs the NHL deal. Hopefully it's in Minnesota. If not, hopefully they move him and get something for him. You're not going to get again, I've said this before, you're not going to get a ton for him right now. Like, if you're just trading him, you're getting like a mid-round pick maybe. But for me, if you just can't let the kid walk. I'd be shocked if they let him walk and got nothing for him. Moving on. Max McCormick, which prospects have exceeded expectations this season and which have failed to meet expectations? In other words, whose stock has risen and whose has fallen? The first one that comes to mind in terms of their stock rising, aside from a kid like Connor Dewar, like I figured, he was in the running to make the NHL squad. And then when he started in Iowa, I figured that's where he'd be all year. And then he just took off when he went back down. He made his way to the NHL, and I don't really see how you can take him out of the lineup. I think he's a really good piece for them. I think he's going to be a really good player for a long time. So, but other than him, I think the first one that comes to mind is like a Pavel Novak. I've said it before, the knock on him forever has been that he's a one-dimensional scorer, one-dimensional offensive player, gets a lot of power play cookies. It's that bomb of a shot from the circle in Ovi's office. But this year, he's just been incredible. He's been their best player just about every night. He's fighting through adversity, too. He's taking skate blades to the face, and he's coming back, cage on. He's scoring in a ton of different ways. I think he's at least working on being more multidimensional. He's not a sure thing for the NHL, but I'm betting on the kid. But coming in, I kind of expected like a 20-40 season from him, and he's already surpassed that. I think he's right around 24 goals and 30 something assists. They still have a good amount of games left, but again, he's scoring in different ways. He's going hard to the net. He's forechecking really hard. Again, his feet, for whatever reason, stop moving the defensive zone. And he just like watches the puck and glides to the wall, which is why I'm a fan of letting him play another year in junior, assuming he still has eligibility. But he's definitely exceeded my expectations. He looks like a completely different player than the player that they drafted. So he's been a pleasant surprise. And it's showing up on the score sheet. And again, he's out producing guys that went way higher than him in the draft on his own team. And he's kind of just been their most important player. I love the versatility, the ability for him to throw him in the middle when you need a big faceoff win. Like, he's not going to kill a ton of penalties for you, but you'll see him out there in the first PK unit to win that faceoff, kind of like a what's that position, lacrosse, the Fogo, faceoff, get out. But I think he's won like 70% of the faceoffs he's taken, and he's taken a good amount. So he's just looked really good. And if he continues to work on the defensive side of the game, if he can get a little bit, I think if he works on his skating a little bit and just has a little bit better form and technique, then, you're looking at a kid with a real shot to play NHL games. Definitely a couple years away, but I think anyways, he's been the kid for me that's really, exceeded those expectations. Same thing with like a Jack McBain. This is the first year he's really popped off. I don't know if I expected 17 goals in 21 games. The potential was always there, but you're always just waiting for him to hit it. And then he got his opportunity on that first line this year. He's getting all the minutes. He clearly worked his bag off in the offseason. Skating's better. Defensive game's really good. He just does everything really well. So, he's always been a really good player. And like I said before, this is a kid that had first round pedigree in his draft year and then kind of just fell off. And we've kind of just been waiting for that size and skill to really like shine. And this year it finally has. But it's been dominant. He scored in every single game that he came back from after the Olympics. They didn't win a game until he came back. Or they won one game before he came back. And then he comes back, scores 2 in the first game back, scores again in the second, and then the third and fourth he scores both. So he's just been incredible. So I figured he'd have a good year, but I don't know if I expected this much from him, and I don't know if I expected him to make an Olympic team. So there you go. Okay, let's talk about DraftKings. The NHL season has been packed with dirty dangles, hat tricks, and big wins. As the action rolls on, DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, has your shot to win big too. New customers can bet just $1 on any team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's right, a bump in the win column for your team means free bets for you. If Sportsbook is not available in your state yet, you still have a shot to light the lamp. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes with DraftKings daily fantasy hockey contests. DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN, bet just $1 on any NHL team, and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code THPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. 21 plus restrictions apply. See show notes for details. And let's just keep going with the details. If you or someone has a gambling problem, crisis counseling and referral services can be accessed by calling 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-426-2537. Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Wyoming. 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado and New Hampshire. 888-789-777/visit http://ccpg. I don't think I'm supposed to read all this. .org/chat Connecticut. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. 1-877-770-STOP 7867 in Louisiana. 877-8-HOPE-NY /text HOPE-NY in New York. Visit Visit opgr.org in Oregon. Call, text Tennessee Red Line 1-800-889-9789 in Tennessee, or 1-888-532-3500 in Virginia. 21 plus, 18 plus in New Hampshire, Wyoming, physically present in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Michigan, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming only. Minimum $5 deposit required. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. There was no way I was supposed to read that entire thing, but that's 3 minutes of our lives that we're never going to get back. And I hope we keep it in because that was really funny. In my defense, I just asked Ish if I was supposed to read the whole thing, and he said yes. So that's that happened.
Dudes fucking rock. If you want more, you can find him every Tuesday, and sometimes we don't really know with him. He's kind of a wild card, maybe even Thursdays, on the Sota Pod feed. So same podcast feed as before, but if you want to follow him specifically, and for some reason you haven't already, you can check him out on Twitter at SpokedZ. Who do we got?
Our friends at Sound the Foghorn. Brett, Justin, and Zeke represent Sound the Foghorn from wild to whitecaps, killing the analytics and prospect game. Here's a sneak peek at their latest episode.
So I guess we'll just start here. Let's just go right into stories, and then we can kind of just add some context if we need to. Justin, we'll go to you first because obviously with a son named Mikko, we know there's a special connection, and just talk a little bit about just what Mikko Koivu meant for you, and just kind of what his jersey retirement means to even you as a fan.
Outside of Gabrick, he was, of course, he was the face of the franchise. Gabrick ended up being my first favorite player on the Wild, but then he left, and it's just Koivu was always good. God, I can't even put my thoughts together right now, but man, just my favorite player all around from then on, and just so, played 1,000+ games with us. So loyal. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
I loved watching him in the shootouts when shootouts became a thing. He just knew the move he was going to come up with. He was always going to do that deke in the backhand upper corner. Just so many things about him made me fall in love with the Wild even more. And then obviously I named my son Mikko. I remember the night he was born, we were playing Pittsburgh, November 25th, 2016. And Koivu ended up getting an assist in that game, but I just remember that was the first game I got to watch with my son, and here he is. I named him Mikko. It wasn't totally in the plans, but then it ended up being the forefront of his name. He just looked like a Mikko, and then just that's where the name came from, obviously. So, just really special player to me.
Is Mikko Baki going to wear number 9, do you think? Or does Dad have a number he's going to try to pass down?
I don't know. I wore 19, but
okay.
You can find the own number he likes. He wears 10 this year, but that was given to him. So we'll see what number he falls in love with, if it's Dad's number or his own or Mikko Koivu's, who knows?
Yeah, so St. Michael did this weird thing when we picked our jerseys. So they did like a complete kind of rebrand of the association. So it was my second year. So I had mites when I moved, and then when I transitioned to squirts, they did this whole rebrand thing where they had all the youth players. We bought a set of jerseys that were like far too big for us, and we were like basically drew a name out of a hat, and that was supposed to be our number, and we were supposed to have that number and wear that jersey from the time we were squirts all the way through Bantams, and I just happened to draw 22. So that's the number I wore all through youth hockey. My brother had worn 2 his whole life, so it was kind of cool for me, like, oh, big brother wore 2, little bro wears 22. And then of course, I grew up a massive Koivu fan. He switches his number to 9. And then I actually wore 2 my sophomore year of high school. And then our captain who left after my sophomore year, who was number 9, that opened up number 9. I was able to wear that for my last 2 years. And then, of course, when I was a senior, I got to be a captain. And, being able to wear a 9 with a C on it and, kind of feel a little bit like my idol was super cool. And then, so if you're wondering where the 9-2 comes in my bio, it's from 9 and 22. But if I had to choose a hockey number now, it'd be 92, just to kind of combine Those two, which it still ticks me off. That's fucking Gabriel Landeskog's number. It just twists a knife in my back every time I remember that. But yeah, that's a fun story about how I got my numbers. And if you're ever wondering where the 92 in my bio comes from, or my Twitter at, that's where it comes from. So
Very cool.
Awesome. Sweet. I don't know, for me, like you said, Brett, obviously I'm younger than you guys. I don't have too many, I guess stories per se, but I can remember too the first Wild game I ever went to. I think it was, like January 2011. My brother's hockey team at the time
you didn't have
had
to live
tickets.
through
And I got,
the late 2000s. Lucky you.
No, did not. So it was right around then. I think they're playing Vancouver that night. I don't think he scored. I don't remember, but I do remember. I just remember specifically. Someone asked, I think a parent of the team. They asked a bunch of the kids, like usual, who's your favorite player, or whatever, and he was one I picked mostly at that time because that was the name I saw everywhere, and even though 9-year-old me or whatever I was didn't really, I understood the game. I didn't really understand league, teams, players, all that. But he was the first player that I actually knew who they were. I knew who Mikko was even before that. And then I can also remember, obviously like Justin said, the backhand shootout move. That's it's classic for everybody. I mean, I saw that in person once against LA in 2013 during the lockout shortened season. He scored one of the
The
three
most
goals.
ridiculous part about that move is every goalie knew it was coming, and they still couldn't stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
How good it was.
And it was perfect. It's just perfect right under the bar, just right over the glove blocker.
So smooth,
just looks so great. And then I think the other one too, and I think it's going to go for a lot of us. Obviously, was the 1000s game. They came back late, tie it, then he scored a game-winning shootout goal in overtime at the exact move, and then was mobbed by basically the entire team. I think, that was just, for me, that's just the other one that, for all the, as we've discussed before, all the crap he's gotten, I think, that 1000s game, that celebration, the way his teammates mobbed him, I think says a lot, and I think is just kind of a good way of, representing what he has and still does mean to, this team, players, and the fans.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen my Mikko story, and I've touched on a little bit just the impact he had on me falling in love with hockey, wanting to be a center, wearing numbers, and wanting to be a leader. All that inspired by Mikko. So that aside, like my favorite playing memory of Mikko Koivu, I don't remember when I think this would have been probably in 2014, because when the Wild had Heatley instead of Gucci, I think right after that trade. They were in an overtime game against Detroit. And a puck went to the corner. Nicholas Kronwall is in pursuit with Mikko Koivu, and Mikko Koivu gives Nicholas Kronwall, this guy known for huge hits. He flattens Nicholas Kronwall with this reverse shoulder hit with his back to him. Flattens Kronwall. I think he injured him, but like totally clean. It was just an exploding backwards hit to the chest that just stunned Kronwall. Koivu takes the puck out of the corner, walks the slot, and hits Setaguchi in the back door for the game winner. And to me, like, that goal was just the epitome of everything that was so underrated about Koivu. The way he did use his size, the way he could box out, even some of the best defensive players in the league. Obviously, you've probably seen some of the tweets from myself and from Evolving Hockey about how prime Koivu from basically 2011 to 2018, he was probably the second best defensive forward in the league, not named Patrice Bergeron, and just because he didn't put up the points, was never really given the recognition that he deserved. Probably should have, in my opinion, won anywhere from probably 2 to 5 Selke trophies, or at least been in the top 3, which he just never was. And there's a lot of arguments against Koivu. Well, he never produced, and he never led this team out of the playoffs. Only did XYZ in the playoffs. He's not the GM. He doesn't pick the players that are put around him. He does what he's dealt. And Justin, you and I chuckled about the late 2000s when this team was dreadful, and Koivu somehow ended up, through all of that, being a plus player in Minnesota, which you think of all the bad seasons where he had to be the guy. And I think it says a lot when 2 former GMs, a GM from your national country, and 20 former teammates, plus other 16 teammates, are going to be there for your jersey retirement. I think it just speaks to just the character that Koivu has and the respect he has. Maybe not always the biggest talker, the flashiest guy, but a stern leader, and a guy that you want, a guy that'll get on your ass. I mean, I believe there was, I think when Kevin Fiala kind of went on his very first like explosive scoring streak. I think it was after Koivu kind of pulled him aside on the bench, like, dude, get your fucking shit together. And then all of a sudden Kevin Fiala took off, right? So he's just that voice of reason that you sometimes needed. And I'm gonna try not to cry on Sunday, but I can't guarantee that won't happen as I watch Nyan go there after. So I'm pretty pumped.
A lot of the things now I do correlates with me and my kids. And the other night, I forgot what game it was. Mikko was being interviewed during the intermission or talking to someone. And my son was in the room. I said, "That's Mikko Koivu. That's where your name came from." He said, "That's Mikko too?" Kind of like that. He's got the same name as me because it's not like a very popular name. So
Yeah.
it was just kind of cool to be able to point out to him that's kind of where the name idea came from. And I mean, hopefully someday he gets to meet him. Honestly,
I hope I get to meet him. I still haven't got to either.
There was a Fan HQ autograph event the day before the pandemic canceled everything.
Mm-hmm.
Or it was one day late where it got canceled because of the pandemic, and we had tickets to go, and I was going to bring Mikko, and it never happened. So hopefully someday that does happen again. But just it's cool to be able to point it out to him, be like, yeah, that's kind of, even though there's a Mikko down the line in our family, we kind of use that as an excuse.
Yep.
Too, a little bit, but it was just cool to be able to point it out to him because
Absolutely.
Not a very popular name, at least in the States.
If you like what you heard, feel free to head on over to Sound the Foghorn. Any podcast platform that you have, we should be there. Look for the Minnesota Wild colors and the iconic Foghorn logo. If we're not on your favorite podcast platform, feel free to let us know on Twitter or Instagram at Sound the Foghorn, all one word. Thanks for listening and enjoy.
If you don't already, follow them on social at Sound the Foghorn and plug that into your favorite podcast platform as well. Who do we got next?
MNCAA, hosted by Nick Maxon. You get your weekly dose of Minnesota's college puck. Here's a look at what you can expect for all 6 Division I programs.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, the main event of the Nevermind. Hi, Max. How are you doing? I introduce you that way because there is going to be quite the event this weekend up there at AmSoil. This is some intense hockey that's about to come up.
This is what you live for in the NCHC. This is what the season builds to. You want the excitement, and UMD, you know, we're happy to deliver. If the conference needs to rely on us to produce that kind of entertainment, you know, I'm happy to be in the middle of it.
Speaking of delivering, your computer camera needs to steady its ISO. You know, you keep going from Batcave to Hollywood stage. They're just like that.
I've got the world's worst ring light here. It's from Amazon, the cheap way out, and you know I've got a.
Is it the light that dims?
The light doesn't dim. It is the computer camera,
it
but
is
the fact that it's just not connected. It's just completely separate.
I see.
So,
okay,
yeah.
so the computer's going, what the heck's going on? But you know, it kind of is almost a perfect rendition of the Bulldog season. Sometimes you're hot, sometimes you're not. I know I'm a St. Cloud fan, so it sucks. But how about this? These two teams, again, we talked about the last few weeks. They seem to be destined on a collision course, and well, here we are, right? The last 4 or 5 years, these teams have hosted the regular season finale. It's been swapped between both AmSoil and the Herbrooks National Hockey Center. But not in the last 4 or 5 years I think the games have meant this much to either squad. This is going to be quite the weekend of regular season hockey between these two squads. We call it a dogfight. I know it's more hyperbole, but I don't think this weekend it's hyperbole.
I would certainly agree. So UMD got quite a bit of help with Western losing, and you know, they had it right in front of them. They could have jumped them or at least been tied with them going into this weekend here and had an opportunity to take over that 3rd spot. But they couldn't get it done on Saturday, to put it lightly there. It was a bit of a frustrating loss, not only for the fans, but for the players as well, hearing from some of them and seeing what they're going through. But to be only 3 behind a Western Michigan team and where they were, you know, just 2 weeks ago even, to see that UMD wasn't able to capitalize on the opportunity in front of them and now have to fight to keep that 4th place spot. It's going to be rough. It is going to be rough.
And you talked about 3rd place too. So that's what St. Cloud was looking at too, because, you know, there was all this focus on the Bulldogs and, you know, how can we catch them? How can we maybe get home ice. There is a chance for that. Let's not kid ourselves. But we kind of forgot about Western Michigan, and North Dakota kind of did you guys a favor. I mean, if things go your way this weekend, there may be an opportunity. However, I think Western Michigan is hosting Miami this weekend for the season finale. So, but I don't think anybody expected UMD to lose on Saturday. Let's be frank. So there could be some surprises, but I guess what shouldn't be surprised is, or what shouldn't surprise anybody that follows this, I think it's okay to call it a rivalry between the Huskies and the Bulldogs, that this is going to be some great hockey. It's going to be emotional hockey. And there's a lot on the line between these two squads. Max, let's take it from the UMD's perspective first, because again, UMD 5-point lead going into this weekend. It was expected to sweep both the Huskies and the Bulldogs to get to a 5-point spread. Essentially, you needed to one overtime point to basically put it out of reach. Now, Friday's game means a lot. So let's focus on Friday. How important is Friday's game for both these squads, but more and specifically for UMD, especially after Saturday's performance where you controlled the entire game but just couldn't get one to fall?
Yeah, I'm going to go in reverse order here. Thinking back to Saturday's game and just the weekend in general, you had 96 shots from the Bulldogs over a weekend. And if you hear that, you're ecstatic as a Bulldogs fan, because that's not something you see from them every night. You're like, finally, we're getting some offensive chances and everything. And then you look at the scoring column, and this 96 shots produced just 3 goals. And all 3 of those were on that Friday game, a 3-1 victory. Get blanked on Saturday, losing 4-0, even after a 46 shot performance or 44 shot performance there is frustrating. I mentioned it before. It's weighing heavy on quite a few guys, and to just run into a goaltender that's that hot, or what have you. I'm not exactly sure what happened. Even watching it, it seemed like a lot of those shots were things that normally go in the back of the net, and you kind of alluded to it. It was just the frustration that was building on the ice. You can kind of see it. It was a little bit palpable that, they were breaking down in some of the other areas, and they had some other fast breaks in terms of Miami's play and how they ended up scoring a couple of their goals as well. And that kind of didn't really add anything to what UMD wanted to do. So they kind of have to take that mentality and throw it out the window, because you can't play like that against a team like St. Cloud. We've seen it in the last series against the Huskies, where you're not going to get all of those chances against a more defensive team, a different style of play than what they faced last weekend. And it's I don't want to say confusing, but it's going to have to be a more cohesive game overall. I don't think that UMD they've probably had a full game, but it's been rare, and they certainly haven't had a full weekend of exactly how they wanted to play. So I would take a full game from them in the upcoming series here, and if we can get a full weekend, it would be even better.
Speaking of full, how about this? The Bulldogs haven't had really a full roster at all this year, and they're going to actually might for the first time this weekend have a full healthy roster. I mean, that's insane to think about, Max. And you mentioned tough losses, right? I mean, St. Cloud, that exact blueprint that happened on Saturday to UMD happened to the Huskies against the Bulldogs earlier in that same week on Tuesday, where the Huskies vastly controlled the game, lost that game. But it's about how you respond, right? And I think one of the weird things about, a situation like this is it can do 2 things. It can get you down, or it can provide a lot of motivation. Besides the Saturday's result, there's motivation to keep home ice. But there's a fine line, right? There's a fine line between letting emotions, kind of help you dictate play and get you back on the right track, or emotions can be sort of a further dividing force. So how important is it for the Bulldogs to keep those emotions in check this weekend? Because, again, it could further sink you down the rabbit hole if you let the emotions do all the talking.
Yeah, emotions in check is one of the major keys that they are going to have in their back pocket coming into this game. We saw it in the previous 2 games with St. Cloud in St. Cloud. Granted, they weren't in the same weekend, so the flow was a little bit different. But UMD got out to an early lead in both of those games, and they were trying to hang on to it. So if they fall behind early, it's going to be something that's completely foreign to them against St. Cloud, at least this year. Granted, there are a lot of seniors on both teams. There are a lot of upperclassmen on both teams in general. So they played each other 7 times last year. They're going to be playing each other a minimum of 4 times this year. And, what seems very likely, another 7 times this year if it goes to 3 games in the NCHC playoffs in the first round there. So they're familiar with one another and they're familiar with that style of play. And, you mentioned it a little bit earlier. The rivalry, if it didn't exist before, which I think it did, the last 2 years, including this one, certainly is really enforcing that or building it up to be something that can be worked at from both teams. So I don't see that as being a negative necessarily, but it is something that UMD is going to have to maintain a mindset of going into it as a tough competition, but one that they can win. The previous 2 games, they have all of 0 minutes of being behind. Granted, they didn't win the first game, but they led all the way through until the last minute. And then in overtime, obviously nobody scored. So for the entire game, they were not down for 2 games in a row. So if they can go in knowing that they can hold a team that is as good as St. Cloud, even with that talented roster, talented goalie, like all of it, it's going to be something that they need to build on. And that mentality of, not getting too hard on yourself or too down if something doesn't go right away is going to be the biggest thing.
I do expect this to be a much more greasy series between these two squads. And that's sort of some hockey that we've seen only a couple times, really. These teams love to play. I don't know if clean hockey is the word, but they like to be the skating, skilled offensive team, right? Chances on the rush, chances in the cycle. They're not like, say, a Western Michigan or an Omaha that can, kind of pound you in the boards, that can be physical. Kind of like Calgary. Holy cow, to throw an NHL reference, that team, we could go on a tangent on how playoff ready that team is, because they just have a little bit of everything. These two teams are not really built like that, and that's why I make the reference. So I guess for both squads, you're almost wishing that the game doesn't evolve into sort of a grudge match per se. But if it does, Max, do you like UMD's chances in that type of a matchup?
Normally I would say I do, because they have been pretty good on the penalty kill all year, but it struggled as of late, and not necessarily against St. Cloud in the past couple of games, but I don't think they're as strong as they have been in past years. They don't have Hobie Bakers on the defensive line. They don't have anybody that's capable of being a completely shut down player. And that's not to say that Ryan Fanti's not good, because he's second in the NCHC right now, only behind Zach Driscoll, who, by the way, was stolen from Bemidji, and that's the only reason that I won't say the only reason.
Whoops.
A good help in terms of where North Dakota's at this year. Great goalie, great team in general. It's something that I have to bring up whenever I can. But back to what I was saying, that the Bulldogs are top 10 in even strength goals against for opposing teams, and they're top 10 in shots against on a per game basis. So when they're playing 5-on-5 hockey, they're a top 10 team in the nation. So I don't see that being an issue as long as they can keep it that way and play a relatively level game.
So what does the ultimate question bring us, which is, how does UMD pull this off? Again, mathematically speaking, you have a 2-point advantage. If you get a victory in regulation on Friday, that pretty much puts you at home ice. That seals it, right? For the Huskies, if they win in regulation, or at least throw it to what the NCAA would call it a tie, or at least to a shootout, that's, at least splitting points. And then even if they still lose in the shootout, that's a 3-point advantage. So the math is still in the favor of UMD, but you got to get there. So how does UMD make that happen?
Yeah, I think you alluded to it earlier, and then with that question as well, the Friday game is the biggest, because if you do win in regulation on Friday, the monkey is off your back for not only the series, but the season as a whole. You would be mathematically above 500, even if you lost out, and then you would just be relying on the pairwise rankings to maintain the top 16 rate. So I think if Sandelin can get the guys up for a good game on Friday and play through it, it's going to put everybody in a much more relaxed position and in a good spot to produce well for the rest of the weekend. But with that being said, there is a lot of pressure right now. And I don't want to see, as a hockey fan in general, but obviously as a fan of UMD, I don't want to see anybody thinking that this game is the end all be all, because there is another Saturday game. And even if you do lose both games this series, you won't be playing at home, but you still have another way into the tournament, another way to continue your season. That's just to win, not necessarily win out, but at least make it to the championship game of the NCHC. So I don't want the guys to be playing with every shift is the end all be all. They need to play a good, smart game and play their style. And I think that they can do that. And Sandelin's got enough experience. This is an older team for the most part that should know that, given where they've been and a couple of them having championship seasons on their resume already. So I just want to see that happen, and I'm manifesting it, as the kids today would say.
I like that word. Yes, manifesting it is. Speaking of manifesting success, right? I think the first goal in both games is going to be pivotal in the series in terms of how it plays out. Max, I want to know if you agree, one, and number two, if UMD scores first on Friday. We saw this with St. Cloud last weekend, how you could still see some of that pressure. You could see some of that nervousness in their game. You score once, they scored twice. They started to relax a little bit. That tends to me, when you bring that mentality into this, I think this could be a very low scoring series. And I do think there's going to be a lot on, I guess not a lot of grade A scoring opportunities. What do you expect on the ice of how the series will actually play out?
Yeah, the first goal is going to be pivotal, and it's funny to say that after having UMD already scored the first goal in the previous two and having completely different results, both of them going to that overtime and shootout format. Ultimately, I do think that not to say that the first matchup between these two was lucky one way or the other, but they did control that game a lot more, and if they can play that style, it's going to be a lot better. It seemed like they were a lot more relaxed and not necessarily getting into some of the scrums that didn't need to be going on. And, some of that just comes with late season play and having it been physical all year long. But like you said, the first goal is going to be huge. The only disadvantage, I shouldn't say the only one, but one of the disadvantages I see for UMD and the NCHC schedule in general is all of the Minnesota state colleges, I believe, are on spring break. UMD at least is on spring break. So it's not going to have that massive student section. You're not going to get a ton of help when the St. Cloud goalie Rennick is he's not going to be getting berated down there or have signs saying anything about his family or sister or whatever. And that's all in good fun, but you're not going to get that type of home ice advantage. So scheduling a tough team or a tough matchup like St. Cloud this late in the year is always fun. It's a great way to close out the season. But having it in an arena that's not going to have the same vibe or energy that it's used to all year might be a little bit different for the players. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing in terms of not getting those super high highs, so you're not going to have any sort of drop off. You just need to be able to get the players up in general for that and make sure that they're understanding when they're doing something good. And I don't think that that's too hard for somebody at the collegiate level.
So what we come to is prediction time. Unbiased, of course, we are here on the MNCAA podcast, but this is, I think, a tough one to predict. There's a lot of variables. Again, these teams have not really been consistent as of late or throughout the season, actually, respectively. But Max, on home ice, you got your backs against the wall to a proverbial degree. How do you see this series playing out?
Yeah, it's silly to say that it's been as close as physically possible, and it has been. But I expect more of the same. You already mentioned it earlier. I expect a little bit lower scoring, two good goaltenders, two good defensive teams. Not that they don't have offensive weapons on either side, specifically St. Cloud, but just the way that they play one another and the way that they played one another for the last 2 years seems like it's kind of leading itself to this. So. I'm saying a split at home as much as I'd like to say a sweep, a split at home, and that'll do it. Not that, it's a split is going to have the same outcome on the season as a sweep would, maybe not having the momentum, but they're going to run into each other the same place, same time, essentially for the next weekend as well. So if they can get comfortable and win one game this weekend, I'll be happy.
And I think Bulldogs fans will be too, as that will certainly help them cement their case for the NCAA tournament. Again, Selection Sunday coming up in about 3 weeks now, so it's coming up quick. Max, again, thanks so much for joining us. We need to head south to another Minnesota State school, the Mankato Mavericks, the number one team in the country. And to get us caught up, we bring in Marissa Boss.
Just like Judd's Budz, you can find all MNCAA episodes on the Sota Pod feed, with episodes dropping every Friday. Go follow the dedicated college hockey feed on Twitter at MN_NCAA. MNCAA was taken by some douchebag with 0 followers that won't reply to Isha with our very lucrative USD cash offer. Now, Isha, who's the last show that we want to promote here this week?
Brave the Wild. Joey has been in the Minnesota Wild podcast game since 2008. Here's a clip from the chiseled veteran.
With that said, though, the Minnesota Wild played 3 games this past week and got demolished. Yeah, let's just say that. Over 3.
And that includes our power play sucked and our goal scoring sucked.
My thoughts exactly. What more can you say? 3-1, 7-3, 5-1. Toronto, Calgary. Calgary looks like a team that could win the Stanley Cup tomorrow. They outscored us 12-4 in 2 games. Yeah, and then Toronto 3-1. It wasn't total demolition, but we didn't score. Our power play sucked, and our goal scoring sucked, and the goaltending sucked, and the defensemen sucked, and the wingers and the forwards, they really, really sucked. And the coaching, okay, maybe not the coaching, but maybe the coaching a little bit. Okay, sorry, I'm just kidding. One way or another, it was, what more is there to say? It was a bad week. It was it was just a bad week. Just flush it out, everything's going to be fine, everything's fine, just flush it. No, let's, the Wild are 2 games ahead of Edmonton, which would be 9th place in the Western Conference.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Flush it out, huh? Flush it out. Yeah, we might get flushed out if we keep playing like this. So, let's giddy up here. Let's giddy up. The Toronto game, I don't know. It was just boring as hell. It was boring as hell at the beginning. Couldn't get anything going. Luckily, you felt confident. At least Capo Kakinen was stopping shots from Toronto and all that. And then after Frederick Gaudreau was pretty much the only player who could get anything going this past week. Broke the twine, so to speak, or, crossed the line and scored a goal, lit the lamps, whatever you want to call it. And that wonderful second line, third line, whatever the heck it is, line, finally was able to get things, its second line, was able to get the Wild on the board and the lead. And it was kind of a familiar thing this week. The Wild would take the lead, and then that was it. It was like, all right, we got this. We're back. We're going to start winning games again. And then that was it. There was no scoring, and then it was like, no, who's on him? Oh, well, who's on him? Score. That was just kind of the feature. That was kind of the feature presentation of this past week. Well, who was on that guy? Oh, that sucks. One-timer goal. And it was just over and over again. If it's the Chuck was time and time again. Somebody put a body on Matthew Tkachuk. Was anybody on Tkachuk? Was anybody on him, or were we just rhyming the... were we just adding an F to that word? I don't know. That's what it felt like. Austin Matthews made it look easy. He made it look easy. And, of course, his second goal. His second goal made me like... His second goal made me squirm or made me cringe. Brandon Duhaime had the puck, was kind of going up the ice, and it's just... I don't know. What's up with Brandon Duhaime? The guy... His stick handling, it leaves something to be desired, and his... awareness seems to be lacking as well. Like, what is up with the guy? He turns the puck over way too easy. He looks like a clumsy basketball player getting stripped from behind in a JV game. It's like, what's going on here? That's what it felt like to me. And it's happened more than once. There's times he had the puck all by himself, Brandon Duhaime, and started stumbling. And that was like a couple of weeks back. And it's like, what's up with that? I know we're all human and we're going to have moments like that, but I don't know. Brandon, let's go. Come on, Brandon. And pretty much the whole fourth line has been non-existent, to say the least, except for Nick Bukestad scoring in that 7-3 game. Woohoo. At least we got on the board again at some point. Yay. But 7-3. 7-3 is basically all you need to say. The 7 is the problem. Just no life. I can pretty much put all these games into one review and tell you the same thing. The first one, not as much. You gave up 3 goals. It wasn't that bad, this and that, but there was just no life in terms of the scoring side of things. We're averaging less than 3 goals a game. Okay, well, it happens. It sucks that it does happen. And this is over a 6-game stretch, going back to the Florida game. Going back to the Florida game. It's a 6-game stretch where the Wild have gotten their butts handed to us. We have not been scoring. Of course, there was the Edmonton game. Okay, so you exclude that one with the 7. But yeah, if you talk about all the losses, basically, Florida, excluding just the Edmonton game, which was actually kind of a sloppy game as well. And Connor McDavid and all of them were playing like because they had played the game before. And they're not a team I want to compare the Wild to right now. If you want to be a good team, you want to beat teams like Calgary once in a while, at least split with them. Pray to God you can get a split. or maybe even a point out of it, like a OT or shootout loss, something like that, something lame like that. But to get, demolished, absolutely demolished, 12-4 in just 2 games, it leaves you thinking like, I was afraid Calgary was going to put a kind of what on the Wild, kind of whoop ass on the Wild, but boy, they did, and it was painful to watch. Painful. I know they've been killing everybody, like like Vegas. They've even beaten Colorado. That's why I keep thinking if Calgary can, I don't know if they can sustain this level of play necessarily, but I mean, even Colorado is obviously way ahead. They're 14 games ahead of second place St. Louis. They're 19 points ahead of the Minnesota Wild. Did I say games? Points ahead of the Wild. 19 points ahead of the Wild. So good night, Central Division Championship. That ain't happening. I don't know. This week just felt like who's on this guy? It felt like we're overcompensating defensively. We're overcompensating. The defensemen are overcompensating on one guy, whoever it is. The puck goes over to the right. Both defensemen are on the right, and then somebody like at the Chuck or whoever is open on the left. And it's like, good Lord, or vice versa. And they have like a one-timer. It's like, oh, well, there's the saucer pass over to Chuck or whoever the heck, and goal Calgary. And that was kind of the theme, especially in those 2 games. The Toronto game, kind of again, it was just like a lame night. It was just a game where we lost. It didn't play well. Not much energy.
Get your questions in every week by following @BraveTheWild and listen by searching Brave the Wild Minnesota Wild podcast.
All right. Thanks to everybody tuning in on Google, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I mean, wherever you get your podcasts from, the best thing you can do for us or any of the content that you heard in this podcast episode, you can go on iTunes and Apple Podcasts, give us and give them 5 stars and a kind review. It goes such a long way. You're already supporting us by listening to this episode, so you might as well go and review us as well. If you're jonesing for more hockey content, go listen through our website, thehockeypodcastnetwork.com. And on your app, please download the episode before you listen, as it just helps all of our business. You can follow myself at VI Sports Talk. You can follow Hoppy at State of Hoppy. And of course, you can find the Sota Pod on all platforms at the Sota Pod. Signing off, I'm Misha Dromi alongside the State of Hoppy. This has been the Sota Pod, presented by the Hockey Podcast Network. We good, buddy?
We good.
Don't fear, just drink some beer and stay wild.